The legendary Iron Mask could very well be him. The grandson of King Henry IV, a notorious master of intrigue and a great lover of beautiful women. His disappearance was too sudden and strange, and to this day, no one has been able to unravel that mystery. François de Vendôme, Duke of Beaufort, one of the memorable characters from the novel 20 Years After, managed to cover himself in both glory and shame during his life. To the people of Paris, he was one of their own, a true king of the marketplace. If his grandmother, the stunning Gabrielle, hadn't passed away just months before her wedding to Henry of Navarre, François would have been king. However, he would have followed in the footsteps of his father, Duke César de Vendôme. He was born in the early 17th century and from a young age found himself immersed in a world of endless intrigue. His father was deeply affected by the loss of the throne, and at every opportunity, he tried to sabotage his brother Louis XIII. Whenever a serious conspiracy was brewing, César was always included among the conspirators. César was incredibly handsome, but alas, he preferred men. Madame de Chevreuse tried many times to conquer this fortress, but to no avail. François, having inherited the title of Duke of Beaufort, fully took after his father in terms of attractiveness. He also inherited the pride and valor of the Bourbons. By the age of 12, François was already participating in military campaigns. A magnificent career awaited him. But César once again got involved in a conspiracy, ended up in prison, spent a long time seeking forgiveness, and when he finally regained his freedom, he was forced to leave France. François spent his youth in England and Holland. Later, he would say that this was precisely why he never learned to speak French properly. The Duke of Beaufort constantly made mistakes. His blunders became so ridiculous that he soon became the talk of the town. Upon meeting a lady who had recently lost her husband, he intended to call her sorrowful, but mixed up the adjectives and said lustful. The high society erupted in laughter, while Beaufort turned red from the embarrassment. When the family was allowed to return to Paris, after the death of the king and the cardinal, the young and godlike François de Beaufort began to score one romantic victory after another. Queen Anne of Austria herself took a liking to him, asking the Duke to practice fencing with her sons and starting to consult him on political matters. But Cardinal Mazarin seized the initiative. Gradually, Beaufort was pushed out of the palace, which of course hurt the ambitious royal grandson. Like his father, François became involved in conspiracies. In the year 1643, the conspiracy of the important took place, which collapsed with a resounding crash. As one of its active participants, Beaufort found himself in the Vincennes prison, the same place where, 20 years earlier, his father and uncle had been locked up. After serving nearly 5 years, Beaufort escaped, a feat vividly depicted in Alexander Dumas' novel 20 Years After. The Duke hid among relatives and accomplices, sometimes right under the Queen's nose, at the home of his longtime friend Madame de Montbazon. He had been inseparable from this beauty for almost a decade and a half. The political landscape shifted as unpredictably as the weather in London. The people would cheer for the Queen one moment, and then drive her out of Paris the next. When the Civil War broke out, Beaufort enthusiastically supported Prince Condé and Madame de Longueville. However, he was clearly more popular than his allies. The Parisians adored François for his down-to-earth demeanor and his approachable nature, which earned him the nickname, the King of the Marketplace. François was so beloved by the public that one anecdote stands out. As the Duke walked through the city, a vendor threw herself at his feet, pleading with him for an unusual favor, to father a child for her daughter. The girl was innocent and beautiful, and the Duke granted the request of the townswoman. In due time, a bastard child was born. While he engaged in intrigue and warfare, Beaufort brushed aside family life. He was often preoccupied with ongoing disputes among his former allies, the Frondeurs, who couldn't agree on how to share power. Tensions were rising. A capricious man by nature, Beaufort nevertheless held traditional views on marriage. Upon discovering that his beloved sister Elizabeth's husband was cheating on her left and right, he challenged him to a duel. Francois killed the Duke of Nemours in an honorable fight. Following this, a break with the Frondeurs became inevitable. Beaufort managed to restore his status quo and negotiate the return of lands and castles that had been confiscated. When he joined the opposition, he had lost virtually all his possessions, and his Parisian homes were destroyed. Now, he reclaimed his property, while his former allies cursed him. Mazarin once attempted to offer him one of his nieces as a wife, but that was too much for the Duke. He politely declined. He stated that he was ready to serve France, and his brother Louis could continue the Vendôme line. Incidentally, Louis had just married one of the daughters. Louis XIV valued Beaufort's military talents, but was cautious about him as a person. It seemed that efforts were made to keep Francois away from the court, just in case. The Vendôme family had caused quite a bit of trouble for the kings. It wasn't worth the risk. In the 60s, the Duke was made admiral and commander of the French fleet. The brave Beaufort set off to fight the Turks in the Mediterranean and achieved a stunning victory against them off the coast of Tunisia. Then, one night, the Duke of Beaufort vanished. Like the legendary King Sebastian, he disappeared without a trace, and no one has ever been able to answer the question of what happened to the king of the marketplace. Later, when reports emerged about a mysterious prisoner known as the Iron Mask, the theory that it might be Beaufort was taken quite seriously. The Duke had vanished, but why and how? Did the king act preemptively to remove an erratic relative who might have started scheming again? Considering that the prisoner died in 1703, he could very well have been Francois de Beaufort. And since there is no reliable information about the identity of the mask, this theory holds as much validity as any other.